Sarah Miller, a 32-year-old manager and part owner of The Morning Grind, a beloved local cafe in downtown Boston, was a woman who valued efficiency as much as she valued empathy. She had worked tirelessly to turn the cozy corner shop into a beacon of warmth for the city's early risers, offering not just exceptional coffee but a brief, necessary refuge from the hectic pace of urban life. It was a brutal mid-January morning, the kind of atmospheric cold that seemed to possess a physical weight, biting right through even the thickest wool coats and leaving the air brittle and thin. Sarah, wiping down the marble counter, watched the wind whip sheets of fine, powdery snow across the street, feeling the familiar, low-level ache of responsibility for the people who relied on her shop for a moment of peace. While she prided herself on running a tight ship, she knew that in a city this vast, not everyone who passed by had the same resources, and she often kept an eye out for anyone who seemed to be struggling against the elements. The steady rhythm of the shop's quiet morning was broken when the heavy glass door opened slowly, letting in a sudden, sharp gust of freezing air that made the bell above the entrance jingle frantically. A small boy, who looked no older than 7, stood huddled in the doorway, momentarily paralyzed by the contrast between the swirling gray cold outside and the golden, coffee-scented warmth inside. This was Ethan, and he looked entirely out of place. His jacket was threadbare and several sizes too small, his sneakers were soaked through, and his tiny hands, raw and red from the exposure, were clutched tightly around a few crumpled dollar bills. He nervously approached the counter, his eyes fixed wide on the menu board, clearly calculating the cost of the cheapest possible item, a small, basic cup of hot chocolate. He meticulously laid his crumpled collection of coins and bills onto the counter, counting them again and again, his lower lip trembling slightly with cold or perhaps embarrassment, or both, as he realized he was still agonizingly short of the modest price. Sarah watched this silent struggle, her professional focus dissolving instantly into pure, maternal concern. She knew the shop's policy dictated strict adherence to pricing, but on days like this, and faced with a child so clearly in need, she wasn't about to argue over a few pennies. Ignoring the register completely, she swiftly poured a rich, steaming cup of premium hot cocoa, adding a generous swirl of whipped cream, and paired it with a freshly baked blueberry muffin, the kind of breakfast that promised comfort and sustained warmth. She gently pushed the items across the counter, meeting his gaze with a warm, steady look, and whispered, "This one's on the house, sweetheart. You keep that money for something else, okay? And make sure you stay warm today." Ethan's wide, hazel eyes registered shock, then profound, immediate relief. He didn't speak a single word, likely too overwhelmed or too cold to articulate his gratitude, but he nodded quickly, his thin frame giving a jerky bow. He grabbed the cup and the muffin, clutching them like treasures, and disappeared back into the relentless wind and snow almost as quickly as he had arrived, leaving Sarah with only the memory of his quiet intensity and a lingering pang of worry about what kind of circumstances forced a child out on a day like this. Sarah returned to her tasks, preparing a fresh batch of brewed coffee, the brief, emotional encounter already beginning to fade into the background of her busy day. She considered it a simple act of charity, a small drop in the ocean of urban hardship, and she didn't expect to think of the boy again. But only 5 minutes later, the bell above the door chimed once more. This time, a man in his early 40s entered. He was tall, dressed in a professional, impeccably tailored dark trench coat, and he carried an expensive leather briefcase. This was Michael Thompson, and he looked directly at Sarah, his expression a complicated mix of pride, concern, and quiet determination. He approached the counter, and Sarah's stomach immediately dropped. She worried that she had offended him by offering charity, that she had embarrassed the boy, or perhaps even that the father was going to demand the money back. Michael introduced himself, confirming Sarah's fear. "I'm Ethan's father," he said, his voice deep and measured. Michael reached into his coat pocket, and Sarah braced herself for a complaint. But instead of pulling out a wallet or launching into an accusation, he carefully placed a small object onto the counter. It was an intricately carved, perfect miniature wooden figure, a flawless, detailed replica of The Morning Grind storefront, complete with tiny bay windows and a sculpted logo. Michael explained, his voice thick with emotion, that he was a highly sought-after, successful, but discreet architect who had recently moved his small practice to Boston, hoping for a fresh start after a difficult period following his wife's passing. They were having a tough month while he finalized the lease on his new office space and secured a major contract, and Ethan had been helping him deliver blueprints across the city, earning a few dollars of pocket money, often walking in the terrible weather. Ethan had confessed the whole interaction, insisting that his father return not just to repay her for the hot chocolate, but to offer a meaningful thank you. Michael explained that he had finished carving the miniature just last night, initially as a Christmas gift for Ethan, but now insisted Sarah keep it. The real surprise, however, came next. Michael then pushed a thick, heavy envelope across the counter. He explained that his firm was currently looking to bid on the architectural redesign project for the new headquarters of a massive, national chain of boutique hotels. They specifically needed a local, small business that represented authentic community spirit and kindness to serve as the design inspiration for their cafe and lobby spaces globally, a touchstone for warmth in a cold, corporate world. Michael revealed that he had been observing the neighborhood for weeks, testing small businesses with subtle interactions, and he had tasked Ethan with one last, spontaneous errand that morning. He handed Sarah his card and a formal, 7-figure contract proposal, stating simply, "We don't need coffee, we need heart. And your coffee shop, Sarah, just showed us it has more heart than any place in this city. You've earned the largest client of your career, and it all started with a free cup of hot chocolate." Sarah stood speechless, gazing from the tiny, perfect wooden replica of her life's work to the massive contract that promised to secure its future. The surprise wasn't the 7-figure sum, but the profound, unexpected connection. Michael needed Sarah's cafe for its integrity, not its revenue, and Sarah had no idea she was serving the CEO of the firm that could change her life. They stood there, two strangers, now bound by one small act of spontaneous generosity and a shy, resilient boy named Ethan. Michael's success had been built on recognizing authenticity, and Sarah's success was now being built on displaying it. The message was clear: true generosity is never wasted. It multiplies in unexpected ways, returning to you not always in the exact form you gave, but always when you need it most, often disguised as the biggest opportunity of your life.